Enel was a character who for the first time gave us the feeling of a truly unbeatable antagonist. He was also the first character to openly use Haki, without any attempt to make it look like a coincidence, without relying on devil fruit powers, just pure Haki. And arguably, Enel's observation Haki was one of the strongest we had seen, allowing him to perceive everything happening across an entire island all at once. But despite being so strong, was Enel at the Admiral level? Was he powerful enough to be considered an Admiral? Well, we will discuss this based on 5 criteria. First, power level. Second, impact on the world. Third, devil fruit mastery. Fourth, use of potential. Ans Fifth, worst case scenario placement. So let's start with the first criterion, power level. Enel's power level was undoubtedly very high. We would all agree on that. He destroyed an entire island with a single attack, and until the Straw Hats arrived, no one was a match for him. However, Enel wasn't as overwhelmingly powerful as we might think. The reason he felt so strong at that time was simply because we hadn't witnessed anything like him before. A character with the power of lightning who could somehow see even the tiniest events happening across an entire island. Oda deliberately built up Enel's image in our minds as that of a god. This is a psychological game. If you convince someone beforehand that a person is weak, then no matter what that person does, they will always seem weak. For example, imagine there is a character in One Piece who is introduced as extremely weak. Now, suppose something heavy is about to fall on him from above, and at the very last moment he precisely blocks it, causing the object to break upon impact with his hand. You would likely see this as a fluke, thinking, you just happened to put your hand in the right place at the last moment, otherwise you would have died, and you might even laugh about it. But now, imagine a character introduced as the strongest, someone unmatched in power. If he gets beaten up and walks away, you wouldn't say, oh, what a weak guy. Instead, you'd say, the other guy was just lucky that he spared him. Even if it is later confirmed that he was actually weak all along, until that confirmation comes, you would still perceive him as someone who merely chooses to spare his opponents. This is exactly the same as the scene with King and Saitama. No matter what Saitama does or who he defeats, people still see him as a fluke because of his low ranking. On the other hand, even if King does absolutely nothing, everyone praises his strength. Oda-sensei did the exact same thing with Enel. First, he introduced Enel as a god, which immediately planted the idea in our minds that the One Piece world was now facing a god. And how do we perceive gods? As almighty beings who can never be defeated. On top of that, Oda gave Enel powers that made it impossible for the Straw Hats to even touch him. This further reinforced his godlike image in our minds, making him seem even stronger than he actually was. But in reality, Enel wasn't anything special. He was just like Magellan, where both of them had devil fruits that made them untouchable, and you could place his power level alongside someone like Crocodile, a warlord. And don't worry, if this still seems doubtful to you, as we go through the next points, you'll start to believe what we're saying. Second criterion, impact on the world. Enel undoubtedly had a massive impact on Skypiea, where no one even dared to think about going against him. But then again, who in Skypiea could you say was at Enel's or his general's level? Who could you point to and say, yes, this person was extremely strong, but Enel still defeated them? It was like a 20-year-old stepping into a group of 5-year-olds. Obviously, the 5-year-olds wouldn't stand a chance against the 20-year-old. Enel never faced any real obstacles that could have stopped him. Compare that to Kaido, who had Odin as an obstacle, someone who almost killed him. But Enel, he just walked up to an almost empty throne and sat on it. So, anyone could have left an impact on Skypiea, but if Enel were on Earth, he would have been just another Loja-type devil fruit user. He wouldn't have had any major impact on the world like he did in Skypiea. So, we can say that Enel's impact on Earth would have been almost negligible. Third criterion, devil fruit mastery. At this point, you might be thinking that Enel excelled in this area, but to your disappointment, no, he didn't. Enel's devil fruit was so incredibly strong that even when he was using it normally, it seemed as if he had mastered it, but the truth was far from that. If you truly want to see what devil fruit mastery looks like, then look at Doflamingo. His devil fruit was literally just strings, something that, if given to someone else, wouldn't have been anything special except for tying people up. But Doflamingo mastered his fruit to such an extent that even a seemingly useless string-based ability became incredibly deadly. He found creative ways to use it that most wouldn't even think of, grabbing clouds to fly, protecting his own heart, and even creating a cage that was so powerful that even multiple strong fighters, including an admiral, couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, Enel had a devil fruit that gave him control over lightning, one of the most powerful natural elements, and yet he failed to master its true potential. Seriously, what did Enel even do the entire time? He avoided attacks because they simply passed through him. He struck enemies with lightning, which they couldn't dodge. That's it. But Enel could have done so much more. For example, he could have heated the temperature to such an extreme level that Luffy's body started melting, but instead, his devil fruit's potential was wasted on him. Fourth criterion, use of potential. Now, we're not talking about the potential of his devil fruit, but rather Enel's own potential as a fighter. He was naturally gifted, belonging to the powerful Burkan tribe, and his physical build alone showed how strong he was. He even had incredibly strong observation haki, but the one thing he lacked was training. There's a famous saying, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. This means that when times are tough, strong people emerge. People who fight until things get better. But when times become easy, the next generation grows weak. And due to their weakness, easy times eventually become hard again. This is exactly what happened with Enel. He had immense potential from his bloodline to his devil fruit, but he was so comfortable in his environment that he never felt the need to train. If Enel had trained like Zoro, he wouldn't have been so over-dependent on his devil fruit to the point that if it didn't work against someone, he would have no choice but to give up. If he had trained his devil fruit like Luffy, he could have found better ways to use it rather than just relying on its basic abilities. If Enel had been on Earth, the competition here would have forced him to use his full potential, but instead, he was in an environment where his potential was completely wasted. Fifth criterion, worst case scenario placement. If you still aren't convinced by our arguments, you will be now. Enel fought the pre-time skip Straw Hats, which is why he was able to dominate them, but now let's imagine a different scenario where he meets the post-time skip Straw Hats, who now have Haki. Now tell me, what can Enel even do? He attacks them with his thunder powers? No problem. They will simply deflect it using armament Haki. Before, the issue was that the Straw Hats couldn't even touch him, but now, thanks to armament Haki, not only can they touch him, but they can beat him up badly. Now, can you even imagine Enel fighting in hand-to-hand combat? Alright, let's take it even further. Imagine a scenario where only Sanji or Zoro have armament Haki in the crew. Now tell me, can Enel still win against them? The answer is absolutely not. He doesn't have the strategic mind of Blackbeard, he doesn't have Doflamingo's hand-to-hand combat skills or devil fruit mastery. He is completely dependent on the basic form of his devil fruit to the extent that he got beaten up by a single kid just because his lightning didn't work on him. Honestly, if the Straw Hats had armament Haki and Skypiea, then Enel would have been as irrelevant as Caribou. Oh, you have a Logia-type devil fruit? Too bad, we have armament Haki. Now take this punch. Now let's look at the admirals. The Kainu can fight in hand-to-hand combat. Kuzan can do the same. Even Fujitora, who is a blind admiral, has swordsmanship skills. Even if you took away their devil fruits, they would still remain admirals because of their personal combat skills and Haki mastery. But if you took away Enel's devil fruit, would he even be able to put up a decent fight, let alone a good one? The only reason Enel seemed so strong to us was because we saw an extremely powerful form of observation Haki for the first time, and second, nobody could touch him. That's it. Now, take a moment and think. Could Enel even fight Sanji at this point? Sanji wouldn't be too affected by Enel's thunder anymore. Sanji's attacks wouldn't pass through Enel anymore. Think about it carefully and you'll get your answer. Was Enel ever Admiral level? And in fact, we'd even say that Doflamingo was much more deserving to be considered Admiral level than Enel. So that was it for this video. We know that after hearing all this, as Enel fans, some of you might not like it, but these were all just facts, so take it as it is. We hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinion in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye. Love you all.